For all the calls to release the Epstein docs, a whole new tranche just came out today, and it's not the ones people were expecting. Bloomberg got 18,000 leaked emails. These have never been public before, from Epstein's personal email account. He was using Yahoo. And it sheds new light on his predatory tactics. It also continues to reinforce what the DOJ, under Ms. Comey, the now fired prosecutor, showed in her prosecution of Ghislaine Maxwell, that she was a big part of this criminal enterprise, not, as she said in her interview, some sort of hanger-on as people did consensual things. Now, as for the president, who has been so suspicious about this, who vowed to do transparency and then broke that vow, well, there's not a lot of clear new information that...
Okay, so what I'm about to tell you is one of the most explosive scandals to hit the Trump presidency, and it involves the one name that Trump absolutely does not want connected to him, Jeffrey Epstein. A shocking leak has revealed that President Trump reportedly signed a series of controversial pardons around 3 a.m. in mid-November, targeting key allies connected to Jeffrey Epstein's criminal network. 3 in the morning. Think about that for a second. The President of the United States signing pardons in the middle of the night, pardons that benefit people tied to one of the most notorious sex traffickers in American history. The secretive timing and the content of these pardons have unleashed a nationwide political uproar. Lawmakers from both parties are demanding investigations. The media is in an absolute frenzy, and Trump is scrambling to contain what could be the biggest political crisis of his entire presidency. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest, you can't really trust mainstream media anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics, to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us. Be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video.
Shows what Trump was up to with Epstein, although we know from prior information that they had a kind of social relationship. You've seen the photos. Bloomberg reports these newly released emails do demonstrate Maxwell's knowledge of the legal jeopardy Epstein faced all the way back in that first case that we've reported on from the 2000s in Florida, and that Epstein negotiated a plea deal in 2008. He sought her advice. Quote, question, which one do you prefer, lewd and lascivious conduct or procuring minors for prostitution? Quite a grim question if you're choosing among those cases. Maxwell responding, quote, I suppose lewd and lascivious conduct. I would prefer lewd conduct with a prostitute if possible. Now they're discussing the plea deal, not whether he did all of the above. Of course.
Let me explain exactly what we know because the details are absolutely damning. Leaked documents show that Trump signed multiple pardons at approximately 3 a.m. on November 12, 2025. Some of the recipients are tied directly to Epstein's inner circle. These pardons reportedly bypass the usual legal protocols, the normal review process that pardons go through at the Justice Department. There was no public announcement. There was no explanation given. Just the President of the United States quietly signing away criminal liability for people connected to Jeffrey Epstein while the rest of the country was asleep. If that does not raise every red flag imaginable, I do not know what would. The question everyone is asking is obvious. Why? Why would Trump sign pardons at 3 a.m.? Why would he bypass normal procedures? Why would the recipients include people connected to Epstein? What is Trump trying to hide? What does he owe these people? The secrecy itself is an admission that something is deeply wrong here. If these pardons were legitimate, if there were good reasons for granting them, why do it in the middle of the night? Why avoid the normal process? Why keep it hidden until documents leaked? The only logical explanation is that Trump knew these pardons would be controversial, and he was trying to avoid scrutiny. He was trying to slip them through without anyone noticing. He got caught. Congressional leaders have erupted in bipartisan outrage. And I want to emphasize that word, bipartisan. This is not just Democrats attacking Trump. Republicans are also demanding answers. They are calling for immediate hearings to uncover the full scope of Trump's late-night legal maneuvers. They want to know who received these pardons. They want to know what crimes were being forgiven. They want to know what connection these people have to Epstein and what connection Trump has to them. The fact that Republicans are joining these calls tells you how serious this situation has become. Even members of Trump's own party recognize that pardoning Epstein associates in the middle of the night crosses a line that cannot be ignored or defended. The White House has tried to downplay the situation, but it is not working. The pressure is mounting every single day, and this leak comes at the worst possible time for Trump, right as there are renewed demands for the public release of the Epstein files. Remember that Trump has been resisting releasing those files for months. His FBI director, Kash Patel, has been making misleading claims about court orders preventing disclosure. There has been a pattern of obstruction and secrecy around anything Epstein-related coming from this administration, and now we find out that Trump was secretly pardoning people connected to Epstein at 3 a.m. The picture that emerges is of an administration desperately trying to protect people involved in the Epstein scandal, including potentially Trump himself. Independent commentators are warning that this could be the biggest political crisis of 2025. They say it severely damages Trump's credibility with his own base. Even Trump supporters who have stood by him through everything else are going to have a hard time explaining why their president is secretly pardoning Epstein associates in the middle of the night. The Epstein case is toxic. Everyone knows what Epstein did. Everyone knows about the powerful people who were connected to him, and the idea that Trump is using presidential power to shield those people from accountability, that is going to be a very hard sell to anyone with a conscience. This scandal also complicates Trump's political future in ways that could be absolutely decisive. Voters who might have overlooked other controversies are going to have a much harder time overlooking secret 3 a.m. pardons for people connected to child sex trafficking. This is the kind of story that cuts through partisan noise. This is the kind of story that makes people who do not normally pay attention to politics sit up and take notice. And it is the kind of story that could fundamentally reshape how the public views Trump and his presidency going forward. So, in this video, we are going to break down exactly what we know about these leaked pardons and who received them. We are going to look at the connections between the pardon recipients and Jeffrey Epstein. We are going to examine why Trump would take such an enormous political risk to protect these people. And we are going to talk about what happens next, because Congress is demanding answers and this story is absolutely not going away. Let us get into it. All right, so let us really dig into what happened here, because the details reveal a pattern of secrecy and protection that raises the most serious questions imaginable about what Trump is hiding. The leak of these 3 a.m. pardons is not just a single scandal. It connects to the broader pattern of Trump's handling of anything related to Jeffrey Epstein. And when you put all the pieces together, the picture that emerges is deeply disturbing. First, let us talk about the pardons themselves. According to the leaked documents, Trump signed multiple pardons at approximately 3 a.m. on November 12, 2025. The timing alone is extraordinary and suspicious. Presidents do not normally conduct official business in the middle of the night. There are protocols that exist for good reasons. There are procedures that are supposed to be followed. There are staff members who are supposed to be involved in these decisions. Pardons in particular go through a formal review process at the Department of Justice. The Office of the Pardon Attorney evaluates applications carefully. They make recommendations based on merit. There is documentation and justification for each decision. That process exists for very good reasons, to ensure that pardons are granted based on legitimate factors and not based on personal connections or corrupt motivations. Trump bypassed all of that. He signed these pardons at 3 a.m. without going through normal channels. That tells you immediately that something irregular was happening. If these pardons could withstand public scrutiny, if there were legitimate reasons for granting them, why avoid the normal process? Why do it in secret? Why do it in the middle of the night when nobody would notice? The only logical explanation is that Trump knew these pardons would be controversial. He knew they would raise serious questions, and he was trying to avoid those questions by keeping the whole thing hidden from public view. Now let us talk about who received these pardons. According to reports, some of the recipients are tied directly to Jeffrey Epstein's inner circle. We are talking about people who were connected to one of the most notorious criminals in modern American history. Epstein ran a sex trafficking operation that victimized countless young women and girls over many years. He had connections to powerful people around the world, politicians and business leaders and celebrities. He died in federal custody under circumstances that remain suspicious to this day. And the full scope of his criminal network has never been fully exposed because people in positions of power have worked relentlessly to keep that information suppressed. The fact that Trump is pardoning people connected to this network is absolutely explosive. It raises immediate questions about what these people know. What crimes were they involved in? What information do they have about Epstein's operations and the people who participated? What information do they have about other powerful people who were involved in this network? And most importantly, what information do they have about Trump himself? Because let us be very clear about something. Trump had a relationship with Epstein. They were photographed together on multiple occasions. They socialized together at parties and events. Trump once said publicly that Epstein was a terrific guy who liked beautiful women on the younger side. That quote has haunted Trump for years, and now he is secretly pardoning people from Epstein's circle at 3 a.m. The connection between these pardons and Trump's resistance to releasing Epstein files cannot be ignored. For months, there has been enormous pressure on the administration to release documents related to the Epstein investigation. The public wants to know the full truth about who was involved in this criminal network. Victims want accountability and justice, and Trump's administration has been stonewalling at every turn. FBI Director Kash Patel has made misleading claims about court orders preventing disclosure, claims that judges themselves have contradicted publicly. Attorney General Pam Bondi has faced pointed questions about why the Justice Department is not being more transparent. There is a clear and undeniable pattern of the Trump administration protecting information related to Epstein. And now we know that while Trump was publicly resisting disclosure of Epstein files, he was privately pardoning people connected to Epstein in the middle of the night. Think about what that means. On one hand, Trump is preventing the public from learning the full truth about Epstein's network of powerful associates. On the other hand, he is using his pardon power to shield members of that network from criminal liability. This is not coincidence. This is a coordinated effort to protect people involved in the Epstein scandal from facing accountability. And the obvious question is, why? What is Trump protecting? Who is he protecting? Is he ultimately protecting himself? Congressional reaction has been swift and bipartisan. Democrats have, of course, been demanding investigations from the very beginning. But significantly, Republicans are also expressing outrage and demanding answers. This is not a partisan issue that can be dismissed as political attacks. Members of both parties recognize that secretly pardoning Epstein associates crosses a fundamental line that cannot be defended. They are calling for immediate hearings to get to the bottom of this. They want to know the full scope of what happened. They want testimony from White House officials about how these pardons were processed. They want to see all documentation related to the decisions. And they want to know if there are other secret pardons that have not yet been disclosed to the public. The political implications for Trump are severe and potentially fatal to his presidency. His base has stuck with him through many controversies over the years. But the Epstein connection is fundamentally different. This is not about policy disagreements or controversial statements, or even the various legal cases Trump has faced. This is about the sexual exploitation of children and young women. This is about powerful people using their positions to victimize the most vulnerable members of society. And this is about Trump using presidential power to protect people connected to those horrific crimes. That is going to be very difficult for even the most loyal Trump supporters to rationalize or defend. Independent analysts are saying this scandal could fundamentally reshape the political landscape going forward. Voters who were willing to overlook other issues may not be willing to overlook this particular scandal. The secret 3 a.m. timing makes it look incredibly guilty. The Epstein connection makes it absolutely toxic politically. The bypass of normal procedures makes it appear corrupt on its face. Every element of this story reinforces the worst suspicions about Trump and his relationship to the Epstein scandal. And unlike some other controversies, this one has real staying power. This one will not be forgotten in a single news cycle. This one goes directly to the heart of questions about Trump's character and fitness for office. The White House response has been completely inadequate to address the severity of these allegations. They have tried to downplay the leak and minimize its significance. They have suggested the documents might not be authentic, though they have notably not actually denied that the pardons happened. They have refused to answer direct questions about who received pardons and why these decisions were made. That non-response is itself very telling. If the pardons were defensible, if there were good explanations for what happened, the White House would be providing those explanations eagerly. Instead, they are stonewalling and hoping the story goes away. But it is not going away. The pressure is building every single day. Okay, so let us break this down into what you really need to understand about this pardon scandal and why it represents such an existential threat to Trump's presidency. Because this is not just another controversy that will blow over. This is the kind of scandal that can fundamentally change how people view a president and whether they are willing to continue supporting him. First point, the 3 a.m. timing is incredibly damaging and essentially indefensible. There is no innocent explanation for signing pardons in the middle of the night. Presidents conduct official business during normal hours with proper staff and documentation as a matter of standard practice. When you do something at 3 a.m., you are trying to hide it from public view. You are trying to avoid scrutiny and accountability. You are trying to slip something through without anyone noticing what you are doing. The timing alone is an admission that Trump knew these pardons were deeply problematic. He knew they would raise serious questions that he could not answer. and he tried to avoid those questions by acting in complete secret. That consciousness of guilt is absolutely devastating to any defense Trump might try to mount going forward. Second point, the Epstein connection makes this uniquely toxic in ways that transcend normal partisan politics. There are some scandals that partisans can dismiss or explain away as political attacks. This is definitely not one of them. Jeffrey Epstein was a monster by any definition. He ran a sex trafficking operation that destroyed countless lives over many years. The idea that a president would use his constitutional pardon power to protect people connected to that operation is repugnant to people across the entire political spectrum. Trump cannot spin this as a partisan witch hunt. He cannot claim this is just Democrats attacking him unfairly. The facts speak for themselves. He secretly pardoned Epstein associates at 3 a.m. That is going to disgust people regardless of their political affiliation or how they voted. Third point, this scandal connects directly to the broader pattern of Epstein cover-up by this administration. Trump's administration has been resisting disclosure of Epstein files for months now. Kash Patel has made misleading claims about court orders that judges have publicly contradicted. The Justice Department has been slow-walking document releases at every opportunity. There has been a consistent and deliberate effort to keep information about Epstein and his network hidden from the American public. And now we know that while this public stonewalling was happening, Trump was privately pardoning people connected to Epstein in secret. The pattern is unmistakably clear. The administration is actively protecting the Epstein network. The question that demands an answer is why? What are they hiding? Who are they protecting? What is Trump's personal exposure here? Fourth point, bypassing normal pardon procedures is itself a serious scandal independent of the Epstein connection. There are important reasons why pardons go through a formal review process at the Justice Department. That process is supposed to ensure pardons are granted based on merit and legitimate factors, not based on personal connections or corrupt motivations that serve the president's interests. When Trump bypassed that process entirely, he was essentially admitting that these pardons could not survive normal scrutiny. He was admitting that if Justice Department officials reviewed these applications through proper channels, they would likely object. He was admitting that the normal checks on pardon power would have prevented what he wanted to do. So he went around those checks deliberately. That is an abuse of presidential power by any reasonable definition. Fifth point, bipartisan congressional outrage signals real and potentially fatal political danger for Trump. When members of your own party are demanding investigations, you know you have a truly serious problem on your hands. Republicans have stood by Trump through countless controversies over many years. They have defended him against impeachment twice. They have dismissed investigations as partisan attacks motivated by hatred of Trump. But this scandal is fundamentally different from anything that came before. Republicans are joining Democrats in demanding answers and accountability. They are calling for hearings under oath. They are expressing genuine outrage that cannot be dismissed. That bipartisan response tells you this scandal has crossed a line that even Trump's most loyal allies cannot ignore or defend publicly. Sixth point, the electoral implications of this scandal could be absolutely decisive for Trump's political future. Trump needs his base to stay loyal and energized, and he needs to win over at least some persuadable voters to maintain power. This scandal threatens both of those imperatives simultaneously. His base may start to question whether they can continue supporting someone who secretly pardons Epstein associates in the middle of the night. Persuadable voters who were on the fence about Trump will be pushed firmly away. The Epstein connection is uniquely damaging because it involves the exploitation of children and young women. That is something virtually everyone agrees is beyond the pale of acceptable behavior. And Trump has now associated himself directly with protecting people involved in that exploitation. So, where does this scandal go from here? Congressional hearings seem absolutely inevitable at this point. Both parties are demanding them with increasing urgency. The pressure is simply too great for Republican leadership to ignore or suppress. Those hearings will seek to uncover exactly who received pardons and what their specific connections to Epstein were. They will examine what Trump knew about these individuals and when he knew it. They will look at whether the pardons were part of a broader coordinated effort to obstruct ongoing investigations into Epstein's network, and they will force administration officials to testify under oath about what happened and why. The legal implications are also potentially significant. Pardons are generally considered absolute. The president has very broad constitutional power to grant them for federal crimes. But there are limits even to that power. A pardon cannot legally be used to obstruct justice or as part of a criminal conspiracy. If Trump granted these pardons as part of an effort to prevent witnesses from cooperating with investigations, that could itself constitute criminal